Thousands of years ago, a single line of scripture diagnosed a human condition that we are literally still struggling with right now, that exhausting pursuit of success. Today, we're visually mapping out an ancient religious text's critique of wealth, purpose, and the fundamental choices we make. It's basically a literal fork in the road between a life driven entirely by survival and one driven by real purpose.
The entire foundation of this philosophy rests on one single, completely uncompromising quote. Let's look at it. "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other. Ye cannot serve God and Mammon." The source is setting up a really stark binary here. There's no middle ground, absolutely zero compromise. According to this interpretation, human existence is fundamentally split into just two possible allegiances.
Okay, let's dive into this and define our terms so we're absolutely crystal clear before we go any further. So, Mammon isn't just, a dollar bill sitting in your wallet. In this context, the text personifies Mammon as wealth, money, or material gain acting as a driving force, literally a master. It's that desperate pursuit of material security elevated to the highest possible priority in a person's life.
Moving right along to Section 1, the core conflict.
As you can see here, the source visually splits human existence into two completely opposing lanes. Over on the left, we've got the path of Mammon. This is characterized by survival, desperation, and this forceful, highly stressful ambition. Then, on the right, you have the path of God, which is defined by purpose, destiny, and divine guidance. The text strongly critiques that first path, that, forceful ambition to just make it no matter the cost, and it visually contrasts that against following a divinely guided, purposeful destiny.
Which brings us to Section 2, the path of Mammon. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how visible a life-serving mammon actually is according to the text. Think of it kind of like a spiritual hamster wheel. It shows up as this sheer desperation to make it at all costs. It manifests as unchecked, really forceful ambition where the sole focus is money, which ultimately results in totally abandoning any sort of spiritual foundation for just endless, exhausting work. The source actually captures this modern cultural mindset perfectly with this quote, "Find work, do something, because money is all that matters." Now, the text actively critiques this default setting. It argues that we routinely push our higher purpose totally aside, and we replace it with this broken compass that is just hyper-fixated on generating income above all else.
All right, let's head into Section 3, passing down priorities. The text argues that this survivalist mindset doesn't just stop with us, it is actively transferred to the next generation. It starts with a pretty blunt rhetorical challenge. Have we first found God for the child? Think about it. When a baby is born, the cultural chorus immediately starts up, right? Go to school, make money, become this, become that. But the text is asking, is a spiritual foundation even on the radar?
And building directly on that, it asks, have we paid attention to God in the child's life first? The source points out a really interesting contradiction here. Parents will gladly pay massive sums for tuition, or maybe buy a symbolic Bible when a child is born, but they rarely take the time to actually lead a child into a true understanding of spiritual purpose. The preparation we give them is almost entirely material.
Which naturally leads to a pretty profound reflection. Do we ourselves know the plans and destiny God has for us? The argument here is super straightforward. Parents literally cannot guide their children spiritually if they themselves are lost. If you are trapped serving Mammon, the text suggests you'll inevitably train your kids to run on that exact same treadmill.
Now, this perfectly illustrates the complexity of the whole issue. The text absolutely acknowledges a completely valid parental fear. If I do not work, how will I take care of my child? It doesn't just dismiss the reality of paying bills and putting food on the table, but it warns that when this fear takes total control, caring for a child gets reduced to mere survival alone, and that spiritual path, it gets entirely abandoned.
That brings us to Section 4, the errand analogy. To really visualize how divine provision is supposed to function, the source uses this highly relatable metaphor. Imagine sending a child on an errand. You wouldn't send them to the grocery store with zero cash and just expect them to magically come back with milk, right? No, the parent provides the money. Well, the text argues that God sends you into the world with a specific assignment, and therefore God provides what you need to actually complete it. The core theological rule being presented here is simple. The one who sends you provides for you.
But here is the major catch. Ignoring the sender means missing the provision. If you ignore the source of your purpose and just go rogue chasing personal wealth, the text argues you cut yourself off from the comfort, peace, and provision meant for your actual assignment. You're just left out there relying entirely on your own exhausted strength.
Moving on to our final section, Section 5, Seeking Purpose First. The source offers up this biblical counter-strategy. It says, "Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all other things shall be added unto you." Now, we need to clarify an important nuance here. The text doesn't say that working is bad. Preparing for a career isn't bad at all. It's really all about the order of operations. The core argument is that the spiritual foundation has to be built first. When purpose leads the way, provision naturally follows.
Let's look at this chart to see the ultimate contrast between these two paths side by side. Serving Mammon leads to endless work, survival alone, and the eventual realization that it was all just vanity. But serving God, according to this text, leads to a fulfilled, purposeful destiny, as well as joy and peace. In this worldview, money and blessings aren't the primary goal. They simply arrive as a bonus of seeking purpose first. So that leaves us with a really critical question to audit our own lives. Are you driven primarily by survival, or are you seeking your true purpose? Whether you view this text as ancient philosophy or literal truth, it really forces us to look in the mirror. Are we just running on the treadmill of material gain, or is there a deeper assignment waiting to be fulfilled? Thanks for joining me for this explainer today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.